When did your advocacy for Palestine kind of begin, or what was your advocacy before October 7th to now?
Well, it all started October 7th. So when I was in high school, I lived in a really small town and I was bullied for being Muslim, for being Arab. So I tried to dilute that as much as I could, which is really disappointing in retrospect, like as I got older. But it was so difficult to just be myself, to be Muslim. My mom wears hijab, and I was surrounded by like all these racist white people. It was crazy. And they used to call me like by my dad's name because it's my middle name. And they pretty much dehumanized me for like all of high school. So I kind of had it like stuck in my head, like, okay, the more I hide this part of my identity, the easier life will be, because it's very evident that people don't like Muslims, especially where I was. People don't like Palestinians. And I was always raised like to know the truth, but to understand that the Western media will always misconstrue it, so that when people are talking about it in school, that it wasn't worth fighting with them because they're not going to be convinced of anything otherwise. So to just kind of like, say your piece and then don't argue further than that. When I was in college, I met somebody who was like super interested in the Palestinian conflict. And so I was like their first introduction. And I found myself being people's first introduction to Palestine often. And I pretty much went my whole life, like if somebody asked me, oh, where are you from? Well, I'm from Raleigh. And they'd be like, no, where are you really from? And I would never answer. I would always just be like, I'm really from Raleigh. Or like, where are your parents from? I'm like, from Michigan. Like, I would never tell people I was Palestinian until somebody was like, what is your nationality? Then I'd be like, I'm Palestinian. I'm Middle Eastern. But when I got to college and like people started to show interest, like I would talk about it with them up until, their questions were answered. And even when there was other conflict going on in Palestine, like I never posted about it because I always had the mentality like, what am I gonna do by posting about it? I'm gonna upset people, and like this stuff is so gruesome and upsetting that it won't encourage people to look into it. It'll actually just make them look away. So I didn't ever really say anything. And even when October 7th happened, I still stayed like silent because I didn't know what to say. Mm-hmm. But I pretty much like heard the news, and my dad was like, group chat was popping. Okay, family group chat was popping. My dad was talking about how they surprise attacked the borders and blah, 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 and this and that. And then it came out like, okay, they attacked the festival. So I asked my dad, like, why would they attack a festival? Like, what business did they have there? And my dad was like, Baba, they don't attack civilians. And I'm like, but Dad, it says here, Hamas killed people at a festival. Why would they kill people at a festival? And he was like, it's either an accident or it's not them. And I'm like, okay, but they're retaliating because they killed civilians at a festival. And he just kept saying, Hamas does not kill civilians. And so I was like, all right, whatever. Well, then it obviously came out that it was Israel who killed their own civilians. And the festival, the music festival, was actually moved. Like the location of the festival was moved a couple days prior to when the festival took place. And so when it came out that Israel actually attacked their own civilians, I told my dad, I was like, listen, sometimes my dad, like when he retells history, he tells it in the wrong way. But like for the most part, like it all checks out. Like, he has this like he reads all the news and he consumes all the news. But then when he goes to like retell it, something about it just seems like so bizarre. But when I looked into it, I was like, wait, he kind of is making sense. So I like sat down with him that night on October 7th. And I just was like, tell me how all of this came to be. Because obviously I was raised this way. Like I always knew Palestinian history. I always knew, Israel's the bad guy. Israel's made up. Israel created their own country. And I've been to Palestine. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen the border patrol. I've seen the military presence. I've seen, you know, me and my mom, my sisters, like sitting in the Jisd waiting just to be berated with questions. Where are you going? What are you doing here? How long are you staying? And like, where are you staying? Because if they don't pick up the phone and they don't match your story, you're not getting in. And it's hot. And my mom is, you know, with 3 girls and like handling it all on her own. And it's just, I've seen it. But I didn't know, like, I had so many missing pieces of the timeline. So just like sat down with him. We had like a super long conversation about it. And then I remember I actually was at urgent care and I like just posted this Malcolm X quote that was, you know, the person who stays silent in the face of oppression is enabling the oppressor. And from that point, like, I just sat in front of my phone and I started to talk about it. And I was like, if we're all gonna talk about it, like before it was just like, I see Palestinian people talking about it, I see Middle Eastern people talking about it. But if we're all gonna talk about it, we're gonna talk about the truth. We're not gonna sit here and like, let the Western media affect skew our vision of what's actually taking place. Because what's actually taking place is being covered by this like Zionist influenced media, where like when we're in college, they tell us you have to use peer-reviewed sources. You can't just use a news article. These things are not viable sources. So now all of a sudden, when we're always taught, don't always believe everything you read on the internet, we have people who are just blatantly reading a headline and they're like, oh, okay, we stand with Israel and their right to defend itself. What? Like, defend itself against what? Mm-hmm. They put everything into place. They are defending themselves against a terrorist group that they enabled, they brought up, they funded. And so from that point on, I just was just talking to my phone. Like, I was just sitting in my room talking to my phone, and then people started to tell me, like, I learned this from you. I didn't know any of this before you said something about it. And so people just were encouraging me in that way because I was kind of making the media more digestible. Because at first, I wouldn't post any of the like super gruesome content because it's hard. It's a hard thing to watch and it's a hard thing to digest. So what I did in the beginning was I would read the headlines, I would, you know, digest the information, then I would sit in front of my phone and regurgitate it in like a more easy to understand manner. So that people, like, when they read the headlines, they would just go to my page and they would, like, understand what this headline means. And they wouldn't have to read the article because I did it for them, which is kind of a cop-out in a way. But the more that I did it, the more people started to tell me, like, I finally understand what's going on because of you. Right. So it made me motivated in that way to continue to speak on the topic. And honestly, for a while, it didn't even feel right to, like, live normal life. So it just kind of became my life. Like, everything I saw, I would just go and like sit in front of my phone and record a video about it. And I guess that's where it all started.